James Whitmore had never panicked like this in his life. Not during board meetings with billion-dollar stakes, not when his company faced lawsuits, not even during the stormy flight over the Atlantic last year. But now, sitting on the private plane with his 6-year-old daughter, Lily, screaming and wailing in his lap, he felt every ounce of control he had carefully cultivated slip away. The cabin was quiet except for the high-pitched cries that pierced the soft hum of the engines. James's tailored suit, once a symbol of power, now felt like a straitjacket. He bounced her on his knee, handed her a chocolate bar, a small plush unicorn, and even tried singing a robot lullaby he had memorized for emergencies, but nothing worked. Lily's eyes, swollen from tears, looked straight through him, as if the world itself had betrayed her. Passengers glanced sideways, some with sympathy, others with irritation. A businessman 3 rows back muttered under his breath, "Some parents should just stay home," while a mother clutching her sleeping child shot James a pitying look. The flight attendants hovered, unsure whether to intervene or let him flounder. James's heart raced. Every option he tried seemed to make it worse, and the sense of helplessness was suffocating. "Daddy, I want home. I want Mommy. I want it to stop," Lily shrieked, throwing her arms around his neck. James's mind whirled. He could buy almost anything: luxury cars, yachts, even a private island, but he couldn't buy her comfort right now. No amount of money could stop the tears. He remembered the small things she loved: her favorite storybook about a tiny dragon named Ember, the rainbow stickers she collected obsessively, the way she hummed when she felt safe. He pulled out her storybook, flipping through the pages, hoping the colorful illustrations would soothe her. Lily grabbed it and threw it across the cabin. "Why won't you just be quiet?" James whispered to himself, panic creeping into his normally calm, analytical mind. Sweat dotted his forehead despite the cool cabin air. Every parent's nightmare: public embarrassment compounded by a child's relentless distress, was unfolding in real time, and there was nothing he could do. In a rare moment of clarity, James scanned the cabin for help. That's when he noticed her, Emma, sitting quietly in the back, a book open in her hands. Her presence was understated, almost invisible. She didn't flinch, didn't judge, didn't roll her eyes. She simply observed. There was a calmness about her, an unspoken certainty that made James's panic surge higher. Who was she? And why did she look like she might have the answer he desperately needed? James swallowed his pride. He had never approached strangers for help in his entire life. He had built empires, negotiated million-dollar deals, and commanded teams with thousands of employees, but this simple human problem, made him feel powerless. And yet, he had no choice. "Excuse me," he called, trying to sound composed. I don't know what else to do. Can you help?" Emma looked up, surprised, her eyes softening at the sight of Lily's red, tear-streaked face. She hesitated for a moment, then nodded ever so slightly, as if acknowledging a challenge she had been waiting for. "Maybe, she just needs a story," she said quietly, her voice gentle but firm. James's heart leapt. "A story," he echoed, desperate for any solution. Yes, anything. Please." Emma leaned closer, lowering her voice to a whisper. "Let her imagine something magical. Something she can help create. Dragons that wear glasses, fairies painting clouds, kittens with tiny hats." Lily paused mid-sob, her tears faltering at the mention of dragons and kittens. She blinked at Emma, curiosity sparking in her watery eyes. James watched, barely daring to breathe. Could it really be this simple? Could a shy librarian's words succeed where his wealth, authority, and frantic efforts had failed? He handed Lily over to Emma with a mixture of hope and fear. Lily clung for a moment, then let go, drawn into the stranger's calm energy. Emma's voice was soft, her expressions warm, as she gently invited Lily into a world entirely of her own imagination. Slowly, hesitantly, Lily began to speak tiny whispers at first, then giggles, then laughter. James exhaled, a long, shuddering breath he didn't realize he had been holding. The cacophony of cries faded into a melodic hum of storytelling, punctuated by Lily's joyful exclamations. Other passengers, once tense and uncomfortable, now smiled quietly, watching a father's panic dissolve into relief. For the first time that day, James realized something profound: this wasn't about wealth, status, or control. It was about human connection, patience, and the magic of listening. And right now, a shy librarian had more power in her gentle words than he ever could in his entire fortune. Emma had always preferred quiet corners, libraries, back rows of cafes, and, today, the farthest seat on a private plane. She was the kind of person who observed before acting, who measured before speaking, and who believed that sometimes, the softest words carried the most weight. Today, her calm demeanor would be tested. As she watched Lily wail and James flail, Emma's heart tugged in a way she hadn't expected. There was desperation in James's eyes, but more than that, there was love, raw, messy, and uncontainable. This wasn't a child acting out for attention. Lily was scared, overwhelmed, and James had run out of options. Emma knew that feeling all too well, the helplessness of watching someone you care about suffer, powerless to fix it. Emma closed her book gently and stood. Her movements were deliberate but quiet, not wanting to startle Lily further. She approached slowly, speaking only when she was close enough for Lily to hear without strain. "Hi," she said softly. I think she might need a story. One she can help tell." James blinked. His mind raced. Stories. He had tried stories, songs, toys, chocolate. Nothing worked. And yet, there was something in Emma's tone, a calm certainty that made him pause. He nodded. "Anything," he said breathlessly. "Please, anything." Emma crouched to Lily's level. Her eyes were kind, inviting, and patient. "Would you like to go on an adventure?" she asked. Lily sniffled but didn't answer. Emma continued, her voice a soft melody against the engine's hum. "Once upon a time," she began, "there was a tiny dragon who wore glasses and loved painting clouds. But one day, the clouds disappeared. He needed help. Would you help him?" Lily blinked, intrigued despite herself. A small hand reached out toward Emma, brushing the sleeve of her cardigan. "Clouds disappeared," she whispered. "Yes," Emma said, smiling. "And he needs someone brave enough to bring them back." Something shifted. Lily's tears faltered, her cries dwindling into hiccups. She leaned in closer, drawn to the story, drawn to Emma's calm presence. James watched, astonished, as his daughter's world began to change before his eyes. Emma encouraged Lily to add her own ideas. "What kind of clouds would you like him to paint?" she asked. Lily's eyes sparkled with imagination. "Rainbow clouds," she said, and Emma nodded enthusiastically. "Yes. And maybe the dragon needs little kittens to help him." James felt a strange sensation in his chest, relief, awe, and a twinge of humility all at once. The solution had not been money, distraction, or force. It had been patience, attention, and a willingness to step into someone else's world. Emma, the quiet librarian, had done what he could not. As the plane continued its journey, the cabin transformed. Laughter replaced crying, curiosity replaced fear, and imagination replaced tension. Other passengers glanced discreetly, smiles spreading across faces that had moments ago been tense and judgmental. The power of a story, of connection, was unfolding in real time. James joined in cautiously, offering ideas to the story, adding twists that Lily delighted in. The three of them created a magical world together: a dragon with glasses who painted clouds of every color, kittens that danced across the skies, and fairies that sang lullabies to the stars. The sound of Lily's laughter was music, filling the cabin with a warmth no designer interior or plush seating could provide. By the time Emma returned to her seat, Lily was snuggled against James, whispering fragments of the story she had helped create. James's panic had melted into gratitude, his stress replaced by awe. He looked at Emma, wanting to say more than thank you, to convey the magnitude of what she had done, but words failed him. Emma simply smiled and returned to her book, her quiet victory in the small miracle of a child's laughter. In that moment, she didn't need recognition. The reward was far greater than applause. It was the knowledge that she had restored calm, joy, and a sense of wonder to a little girl and her exhausted father. As James watched Lily drift into a peaceful, contented hum, he realized something profound. He had wealth, influence, and power, but in the face of human emotion, these meant little. Connection, patience, empathy, these were the true currencies of life. And sometimes, the smallest person, the quietest voice, the unnoticed librarian could change everything. The plane continued through the sky, carrying them toward their destination, but James knew that something extraordinary had already happened. The bond between father and daughter had been strengthened, a stranger had entered their lives in the most unexpected way, and Lily had discovered a world she could explore with nothing but imagination. And for James, the lesson was clear: real solutions weren't always found in control or money, they were found in stories, in empathy, and in the courage of someone willing to step in when it mattered most. The plane hummed softly as it cut through the clouds, but inside James Whitmore's small private cabin, a new kind of energy had taken hold. Lily, once inconsolable, now sat cross-legged in her father's lap, her wide eyes glued to Emma, the shy librarian whose quiet voice had worked a miracle. Emma smiled gently, letting Lily take the lead. "What happens next?" she asked. Lily's imagination ignited like fireworks. "The dragon, he needs rainbow clouds to fly. But the clouds are hiding because the kittens are scared." Her voice was soft at first, then grew bolder with excitement. James felt a lump in his throat. He had spent years building companies, negotiating deals, and making high-stakes decisions, but nothing had ever made him feel so small, so odd, and yet so alive. Watching his daughter's mind expand, listening to the laughter that bubbled up as she created, he realized that this moment was more precious than anything money could buy. Emma guided Lily gently, encouraging her ideas while weaving them into the story. The dragon became a quirky, lovable creature with oversized glasses, a knack for painting clouds in impossible colors, and a stubborn streak that mirrored Lily's own spirited determination. The kittens, tiny and mischievous, learned to help, forming a chaotic but charming team with the dragon. "Daddy," Lily said suddenly, her eyes sparkling, "you can be the brave knight? You help the dragon fly." James blinked, startled. But then he laughed, a deep, full laugh he hadn't realized he'd been holding back, and joined in, adding his own twist to the tale. He played the knight who needed courage not from a sword or a shield, but from kindness and imagination. Emma watched quietly, a warm smile on her face. She didn't need to lead, she only needed to guide. And as the story unfolded, the cabin seemed to transform. Other passengers peeked from their seats, intrigued by the joyful energy that now filled the once tense air. What had been a chaotic, uncomfortable flight had turned into a magical storytelling session. Lily's laughter echoed like music, filling every corner of the cabin. She was no longer a frightened child, she was a creator, a participant in a world of her own imagination. James felt a surge of gratitude toward Emma, whose quiet presence had unlocked something in his daughter and in him. "Look!" Lily exclaimed. "The dragon is flying. And the kittens are painting the clouds with rainbow colors." James clapped his hands, pretending to be astonished. "Incredible," he said, grinning. "You're amazing, Lily. And Emma, you're a genius." Emma blushed slightly but shook her head. "It's not me," she said softly. "It's her. She's the one creating the magic." James looked at her and realized how true it was. Emma hadn't simply stopped the crying. She had given Lily something far more valuable, the power to imagine, to lead, and to feel joy again. And in the process, she had reminded James of something he had long forgotten: the wonder of storytelling, the transformative power of listening, and the beauty of letting a child's imagination guide the way. For the rest of the flight, the trio continued weaving their fantastical tale. Every twist and turn of the story was met with laughter, gasps of delight, and endless questions. Lily's earlier panic had vanished completely, replaced by energy, creativity, and the infectious excitement of making a story come alive. James felt a quiet pride swell in his chest. In a single, unexpected moment, a shy librarian had turned what could have been a nightmare into one of the most unforgettable experiences of his life. He realized that no amount of money could have achieved this. No toy, no chocolate, no electronic gadget could have replaced the simple magic of connection, imagination, and storytelling. By the time the plane began its descent, Lily was curled comfortably against him, yawning but still buzzing with excitement over their dragon, the kittens, and the rainbow clouds. James held her close, feeling a profound sense of peace. For the first time in hours, he understood that the true magic of life wasn't in wealth or control. It was in moments like these, where love, creativity, and human connection converged in unexpected ways. Emma quietly returned to her seat, smiling to herself. She had come on the flight simply to travel, to read, to keep to her quiet routine. And yet, in a single act of courage of stepping forward when it mattered most, she had created something extraordinary. She had reminded a father of his power to connect with his child, and she had reminded a little girl that the world was full of wonder, waiting to be imagined. And as James glanced at Emma one last time before the cabin doors opened, he realized that sometimes, the smallest, quietest people could leave the biggest impact. The plane had settled into a gentle rhythm, its engines a soft background hum to the magical world they had created. Lily, once a storm of tears, now sat contentedly between her father and Emma, chattering excitedly about dragons, rainbow clouds, and kittens with tiny hats. James Whitmore couldn't stop staring at the librarian. She was quiet, unassuming, and yet somehow she had done what no amount of wealth or authority could achieve. She had calmed his daughter, restored joy, and reminded him of a simple truth: human connection was more powerful than money, more essential than control, more lasting than influence. "Emma," he began, his voice slightly hesitant, "I don't know how to thank you." "Really? You?" Emma raised a hand softly. "You don't have to," she said, her voice calm, almost shy. "I just saw a little girl who needed help. And she was willing to use her imagination." She smiled, modestly deflecting his gratitude. James chuckled, realizing just how out of his element he was. He was used to commanding rooms, closing deals, and navigating power dynamics, but this, talking to someone like Emma, felt different, meaningful, and entirely human. "You know," he said, a spark of humor in his voice, "I deal with million-dollar contracts every day, and yet the hardest problem I've ever faced today was calming my daughter. And you solved it in 5 minutes." Emma's smile widened, though she looked away politely. "Sometimes the hardest problems aren't about money," she said softly. "They're about patience, attention, and listening." James nodded slowly, letting her words sink in. He realized she was right. All the luxury in the world couldn't fix what Lily needed. It took empathy, creativity, and a willingness to step into another person's world. Emma had done all of that effortlessly. Lily, now fully engaged in recounting the story, added her own dramatic twists, giggling as her father played the reluctant knight and Emma narrated the dragon's quirky adventures. Watching them interact, James felt a warmth he hadn't experienced in years, a rare sense of connection that reminded him what truly mattered. The flight attendants, who had been nervous earlier, now peeked in quietly, smiling at the scene. Other passengers, who had once stared with impatience, now observed with curiosity and quiet admiration. A simple story, a little imagination, and a kind heart had transformed the atmosphere completely. As the plane began its descent, James realized something profound: he wanted to know more about Emma. Not for business, not for fame, not for status, but because she had touched his life in a way no one else ever had. There was a calmness in her, a clarity, a sense of quiet strength that he found compelling. Emma, sensing his gaze, offered a small, polite smile before returning to her book. She was private, reserved, and yet her presence had created something extraordinary. James respected that. He understood that her impact wasn't about recognition, it was about connection. When the seatbelt sign flickered off, signaling the end of the flight, James leaned closer. "Emma, would you, maybe join us for a coffee sometime?" he asked, careful to keep his tone gentle, non-imposing. Emma hesitated for a fraction of a second, then nodded, a shy but genuine smile crossing her face. "I'd like that," she said softly. Lily clapped her hands in delight. "Yes. We can tell more stories." James laughed, feeling an unfamiliar but welcome flutter of hope. In one day, they had experienced fear, frustration, wonder, and joy. And through it all, a bond had formed, not because of money, influence, or circumstance, but because someone had chosen to step forward and care. As the plane touched down, James felt gratitude, awe, and a renewed sense of what truly mattered in life: love, imagination, and human connection. And as he held Lily's hand and walked toward the gate, he knew that this was more than just a shared story. It was the beginning of a meaningful bond, one that could change their lives in ways they had yet to imagine. The plane doors opened, releasing a rush of cool air that felt like a gentle exhale after the whirlwind of the flight. James Whitmore walked down the jetway, Lily skipping beside him, her small hand wrapped tightly in his. She looked up at him with wide, happy eyes, the tears and panic of earlier long forgotten, replaced by excitement and joy. Emma stayed back for a moment, quietly gathering her things, her presence almost ethereal in its subtlety. She had left a mark on the flight, on Lily, and on James, without ever demanding recognition. And in that moment, James realized the full depth of her impact. "Daddy," Lily said, bouncing slightly, "can we tell more stories like that tomorrow?" James smiled, his heart full. "Absolutely, sweetheart," he said, ruffling her hair. "We can create worlds together anytime we want." He glanced back at Emma, who was heading toward the exit, and felt a strange mixture of gratitude and admiration. She had entered their lives quietly, unexpectedly, and had changed everything. No wealth, no status, no influence could have done what she had accomplished with patience, imagination, and kindness. As they stepped into the bustling airport, James reflected on the lesson of the day. For all his achievements, all his successes, the most profound moments weren't in boardrooms or on balance sheets. They were in laughter, imagination, and human connection. A shy librarian, unnoticed by most, had reminded him of something fundamental: life's true treasures were intangible, fleeting, yet infinitely more valuable than anything money could buy. He knelt down to Lily's level, holding her face gently. "You know," he said softly, "sometimes the bravest people aren't the ones with swords or shields. Sometimes, the bravest people are the ones who listen, who share stories, who help others see magic where they couldn't before." Lily's eyes sparkled. "Like Emma?" James nodded, a smile spreading across his face. "Exactly like Emma." Even as the crowd swirled around them, James felt a calm he hadn't known in years. He understood now that true power wasn't measured in wealth, influence, or status. It was measured in moments like these, in laughter, in trust, and in the courage to step into someone else's world and make it better. Emma's quiet bravery had transformed a panicked, tearful flight into a memory they would all cherish forever. For Lily, it was a story she could hold onto, a reminder that imagination and kindness could conquer fear. For James, it was a lesson he would carry for life: sometimes, the smallest actions, the quietest voices, have the power to change everything. And as they walked toward the exit, James knew one thing for certain: he would never forget the shy librarian who had reminded him of what truly mattered, nor the magical story that had turned fear into laughter and panic into connection. Life, he realized, wasn't about the fortune you amassed, it was about the moments you shared, the hearts you touched, and the stories you created along the way. And with that, James, Lily, and the memory of Emma's quiet magic stepped into the world, forever changed, carrying with them a lesson far more valuable than any sum of money: the extraordinary power of empathy, imagination, and human connection. This wraps up the story with a satisfying emotional resolution, perfect for the viral, heartwarming storytelling style of that impressive a story. If you want, I can also craft a condensed version for TikTok/YouTube Shorts, optimized with punchy sentences and cinematic beats for maximum engagement. This makes it ready to film as a 3 to 5 minute viral story.